Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. So now, I have two participants in this meeting, and my time here is 5:14. Okay. So how are you guys doing? Are you okay? Let us hear first from Miss Jana.
I'm doing good, ma'am.
Hey, that's good. That's great. So how about you, Miss Jessica? Are you doing also great?
Yes, I'm also doing great.
Yeah. So for us to start this lesson, so yun. Here are some tips on how we can learn more effectively. So yan, no phones, please disregard your phones for now because we are having our classes and then discuss. So let us discuss how we are learning here in this class. Of course, focus. We need to focus so that we can understand the lesson better and then prioritize. Please prioritize this meeting because now we are studying and also take notes. So for you to better understand our lesson for today and for you to better remember it, so we should take notes and then plan. So for you to not experience cramming, you should plan. Yeah. So are you ready, guys? Yeah. So to formally start our discussion, um, let us guys think that you are in a school and as a teacher already. So as future educators, I know that we aspire to be a teacher someday. So imagine that you are going to ask a question to your co-teacher as for their schedule for today. Imagine that you are going to ask for their schedule today of your co-teacher and your principal. So, do you think there will be a difference on how you're going to ask the both of them? So, let us hear from Miss Jana.
Um, I think there will be a difference, of course. If I'm going to ask my co-teacher, I might ask her in a casual way or just ask her directly what is her schedule today. While if I'm going to ask our principal, I might add greetings first before asking him if he's scheduled to make it formal and polite. That's it, ma'am.
So, yun, a good point. So, you emphasize that there will be a change of way on how you're going to approach your co-teacher because you're close with your co-teacher. So maybe you will approach her casually, and then you also said that when you're going to approach the principal, you will use some polite phrases for you to not sound rude. So that's a good point. How about you, Miss Cheska?
Okay, so like what Jana has said, I also think that there will be a difference. Maybe the tone will differ when I'm asking them. So I think that I will use my normal or uh, kind of loud voice when I'm asking my co-teacher. So when I'm asking the principal, I think that I will use my calm voice, especially I'm talking with the principal of the school.
So yun, so
That would be all.
that's great. You also emphasize the tone of your voice that you will use when you're speaking to someone close to you, just like your co-teacher. Or imagine you are talking to your siblings, so you just talk to them casually or in your normal voice. Sometimes nga you're using loud voices, you're shouting to them because you're just close to them. So you also said that you will use your calm voice when you're talking to the principal because we know that he has a higher authority than us teachers. So yun. So that's a good observation for everyone. So you both have good points. So because of this, I think we are ready to formally start our discussion for today. So what do we call this kind of questions that we have just talked about just now? So our discussion will focus on indirect questions. So what is an indirect question? So will you please read the slide, Miss Cheska?
Indirect questions are more polite than direct questions. They are very common in formal spoken English, particularly when asking for information.
Okay, so that's great. So let me repeat this. Indirect questions are more polite than direct questions. So in here, there are two kinds of questions that is being talked about. So the first is direct question, and the second is indirect questions. So in here, it says that indirect questions are more polite than direct questions. So why do we say so? So it says here that they are very common in formal spoken English, particularly when asking information. So let us first compare direct questions to indirect questions. So direct questions come to the word itself, direct. So it is straight to the point. So um, this kind of question can be used to informal spoken English, just like when you're talking to someone you are close to, just like the your co-teacher. So you can talk to them casually. But in indirect questions, it says that it is more polite than direct questions, which means it uses some polite phrases for you to not sound rude and for it to become formal, especially when you are in a formal spoken English context. So, indirect questions also used when asking for information. So, when you want to know about something, um, you may ask indirect questions. So, in here we have two types of indirect questions. So, the first one is indirect open questions. So, before we proceed to discussing indirect open questions, let us first have a rule based on its form. So, indirect open questions contains first the opening phrase, plus the question word, plus the subject, and plus the verb. So, Miss Parinas, can you repeat the pattern for the indirect open questions?
For indirect open questions, the patterns are first opening phrase, second is the question word, next the subject, and last is the verb.
Okay, so great. So now, let us move on. So let's discuss and analyze together these questions. So, Miss Cheska, can you read the first and the second question?
Okay, for the first question, where is the station? Second question, could you tell me where the station is?
Okay, so you're great about that. So, can you please tell me what are your observations regarding these two questions?
Okay, so I think the first question is more direct. So the second question, there is an opening phrase like, could you tell me that
Okay,
would
Okay, so that's a great observation. So in the first question, we ask for information directly. So we did not use any in Filipino palabox. So we did not use that word. In English, we call that as opening phrase, which is used in the second question. So in here, before asking for the information that we're looking for, we used opening phrases. So look at these examples. So I have here three examples, and there are also pictures regarding the context of these questions. So the first example is, let me read it. Do you know how much the tickets will cost? And then a second example, could you tell me why you were late? And then the third, could you tell me what time the stores close? And so let us discuss and analyze the first example. So as you can see, the from the word the first question, we changed it into a direct question because we have now defined what is an example of direct question. So we use this word now. And then the second one, instead of saying second question, we now change the word second into the word indirect so that we would be more familiarized, so that we can have a term on how on what these questions are. So Miss Jana, can you please read the first can you please read the direct and indirect question here?
Direct question. How much will the tickets cost? Indirect question. Do you know how much the tickets will cost?
So could you tell me um where where are the parts of the indirect open questions there, the pattern that we used? Could you locate here in this question?
Um, do you know in the opening phrase how much the question word? The tickets is the subject and will cost is the rest of the question.
Okay, so in indirect question, so it starts with an opening phrase, which is do you know, and then the question word how much, and then the subject, which is the tickets, and then the verb, which is will cost. So remember that when we are asking in indirect questions, the subject always comes before the verb. Okay, so please remember that it is always subject verb, not verb subject. Okay, always remember that. But in when it comes to direct question, the verb comes before the subject. So there is an inversion there. So when it comes to direct question, the verb comes before the subject, and in indirect question, subject comes before the verb. Okay, so understand? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
so thank you for that. So let us now move to example number two. So Miss Jessica, will you please read these questions?
Okay, for direct question. Why were you late? Indirect question. Could you tell me why you were late?
Okay, so now please locate the um the patterns that we have in this question, please.
Okay, so could you tell me is the opening phrase? Why is the question word? You is the subject and where is the verb and late is the other part
Okay,
of the
so
question.
you're right. So we have here an opening phrase which is could you tell me? And then the question word why, and then the subject which is you, and then the verb is were late. So can you see that in when it comes to direct question and indirect question, you will see the inversion, diba? So in here, the first the pattern in direct question, the pattern in the direct question is question word, verb, and subject. But in indirect, question word, subject, and verb. Okay, so they're different when it comes to form. Okay, and then the next example. So Miss Jana, can you please read?
What time do the stores close? And for the indirect question, could you tell me what time the stores close?
Okay, so will you please locate again what are the patterns that we used in this question?
Could you tell me is the opening phrase? What time is the question words? And the stores is the subject and close is the verb.
Okay, so you're right. So now, now that we understood what are the examples of direct question and indirect question, and the patterns of indirect open questions as well. So let me reiterate the form once again so that you will remember it clearly. So for indirect questions, we have for the indirect open questions rather, we have the form opening phrase, which is could you tell me, plus the question words why, where, what. and so on and so forth. And then the subject, which is the topic of the sentence, the station, and then the verb is the word is. So yun. And then the next one is, of course, if there is an open question, there is a closed question as well. So what is an indirect closed question? So let us define these questions by having the uh, pattern, question pattern. So Miss Jana, will you please read the pattern that we have for indirect closed questions?
For indirect closed questions, the pattern is first opening phrase, next is or whether, next is subject, next is verb, and lastly, rest of the sentence.
Okay, so um, the noticeable difference between indirect open questions and indirect closed questions is that indirect closed questions now has the presence of the words rather if or whether in the question. So if we see that there are words if or there the word whether, we can call that as indirect closed questions. Okay. So now we have our example here. So let us discuss and analyze together again. So, Miss Pantig, will you please read the first and second question?
Okay, for the first question, is it raining outside? Second question, could you tell me if or whether it is raining outside?
Okay. So, um, in this part, okay, so the first question is still the direct question, and then the second one is still the indirect question. So now you will see the presence of the word if or whether. So now let us look at these examples, and then we will locate again the question pattern in further examples later. So let us look at these examples. I only now have two examples and also a picture based on the context of the um, questions. So the first example is, do you know if that restaurant is expensive? And then the next example is, could you tell me whether the train is on time? So yan. So let us analyze it further. So let us look at the first example. Miss Jessica again, will you please read the questions in this slide?
Okay, for the direct question, is that restaurant expensive? For the indirect question, do you know if that restaurant is expensive?
Okay, so before we locate, let me just repeat the pattern because maybe you've already forgotten. No? So in indirect closed questions, we have opening phrase plus the word if or whether plus the subject plus the verb. So in indirect open and closed questions, still the subject comes before the verb and then the rest of the sentence. Okay, so let us now go back to Miss Jessica, and then we will analyze the question pattern in this example. So will you please locate the question patterns here, Miss Jessica?
Okay, so do you know is the opening phrase. So if is the if or whether for the indirect close question. Okay,
Yep.
so that restaurant is the subject and is expensive is the other part of the question, the rest of the question.
Okay, so let me repeat. So, do you know is the opening phrase. If is the presence of the word if or whether. That restaurant is the subject. The verb is the word is. And then expensive is the rest of the question. Yon. So, you will also see in the, let us compare the direct question and indirect question. So, just like in the, what we have discussed from indirect open questions, um, there, there are also, inversion is also present, no? Because in, when it comes to direct question here, the verb comes before the subject, the verb is comes before the subject, which is that restaurant. But when it comes to indirect question, the subject, that restaurant, comes first before the verb is. So they are the same. Okay? And then the next example, Miss Jana, will you please read?
For the direct question, is the train on time? And the indirect question, could you tell me whether the train is on time?
So would you please locate the question pattern in the example question again?
Could you tell me is the opening phrase? Whether is the presence or of if or whether the train is the subject, is the verb, and on time is the rest of the question.
Okay, great. So you had a good answer. So could you tell me, is the opening phrase once again the whether, so the presence of the word if or whether, the train is the subject, is verb, and on time the rest of the question. So yun. So let us have phrases for indirect questions. I know that you noticed that we only used two opening phrases for indirect questions, which is could you tell me and do you know? But there are also other examples of phrases for indirect questions, just like these examples. I was wondering, do you have any idea? Would it be possible? Is there any chance? Or would you mind? So yun. But let me add, there are so many opening phrases for indirect questions. But actually, indirect questions are not only questions alone. They can also be statements. So I did not add some phrases for indirect questions here because they are used for indirect statements. That's why I excluded some of the um, opening phrases that I have here. So, did you understand our lesson for today? Can we now move on for the exercises? Please respond.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so now we are moving on to the exercises for you to, or for me to check if you understand our lesson for today. So the direction is make an indirect question based on the pictures below. Of course, we need to visualize. We need our questions to be contextualized so that I input some pictures here. So the first one to answer is Miss Cheska. So what is the indirect question that you have here in this based on this picture?
Okay, so I think they're talking about a laptop and okay, so I think she's asking about the laptop. So the question is, may I know how this system works?
Okay, so that's a good observation. No, you looked at the photo. Yeah, so that's right. So the what is your answer again? May I know
Know
how
how
this system
system
works?
works?
So
Yes.
let us locate the the question pattern for that. So what
Uh,
is the opening phrase there?
okay, so the opening phrase is may I know. Then how is the question word,
Yep.
and this system is the subject and works is the verb of the question.
Okay, so that's great. Um, I am seeing that you're really learning from this lesson, Miss Jessica. So
Okay, thank you.
next, so next we have Miss Jana. So would you please make an indirect question based on this picture? Maybe I can give you some time that you would analyze the photo.
Um, is there any chance we could move the session? to Sunday.
Okay, that's a great observation as well. So maybe the doctor and the patient were talking about when will they meet next, so that the patient asks, what's the question again, Miss Jana?
Is there any chance we could move next session to Sunday?
Okay, so the patient is asking, is there any chance that they could move the next session on Sunday to the doctor? So maybe that's what they are talking about in this picture. So Miss Jana, can you locate the question pattern and the question that you also made?
Um, the opening phrase in the question is there any chance?
Okay.
Um, so, in this sentence, I believe that the question word is omitted. So we could move the next session would be the subject, and to Sunday is the rest of the question.
Okay, so wait. So in the question that you have said, so the question is there any chance we could move the next session to Sunday? So is there any chance there is the opening phrase? And then we omitted the question word because there are some instances that we are omitting the question word. I will explain that in some rules to remember later. So we is the subject because like what I said, subject comes before the verb. Okay, so could move is the verb, and then the rest of the sentence is the next session to Sunday. So that is the question pattern for the question that you have made, Miss Jana. So we have the third example here. So Miss Cheska, would you please tell us about your idea about this question? I will give you some time to think or to analyze the photo. What do you see?
Okay, so I think the woman is lost. I think she's asking for directions. Okay, so I think the a suitable question would be, do you have any do you have any idea where this place is?
Okay,
Because it
so
seems that she's lost.
okay, so that's right. Maybe that paper contains a map, or that maybe that paper contains a description of the place or an address itself, diba? So maybe that paper contains that illustrations. So maybe she's showing that to a person or a random person in that place. So your question is, what is it again, Miss Jessica?
Do you have any idea where this place is?
Okay, so your question is, do you have any idea where this place is? So could you please locate the question patterns in the question that you have given to us?
Okay, so do you have any idea is the opening phrase? Where is the question word? This place is the subject and is the verb.
Okay, so that's right. So let me repeat what Miss Cheska said. So, do you have any ideas the opening phrase? And then where is the question word? This place is the subject, and the word is the verb. Okay, so now we are down to our last example or last exercise. So we're going to finish this session I think early. So, Miss Jana, can you please analyze this photo and give us an indirect question based on that picture? So I'll give you some time to think.
based on the picture, I guess they're talking about some business matters. So um the question could be, may I know if you would be able to finish the proposal tomorrow?
Okay, so that's a great observation because based on the picture, I think there are three people having a meeting. So you said, Miss Jana, that maybe they're talking about business related matters because as you can see, they wear formal wears. They wear tuxedos and polos, diba? So maybe they're business man or business woman. They're business people. So what is your question again, Miss Jana?
May I know if you would be able to finish the proposal tomorrow?
Okay, so your question is, may I know if you would be able to finish the proposal tomorrow? So can you please locate the patterns that we have used and the question that you gave?
Um, may I know is the opening phrase, and if is the presence of if or whether, and you is the subject, would be able to finish would be the verb, and the proposal tomorrow is the rest of the question.
Okay, so you are right. Let me repeat it once again. So may I know is the opening phrase. So guys, the question that Jana has given to us is an example of an indirect close questions because of the presence of the word if. Okay, so let me repeat. May I know is the opening phrase. If is the presence of the word if and whether, and then you is the subject, and the verb would be able to finish, and then the proposal tomorrow is the rest of the question. So would you please clap your hands because you did great for this exercise. Yan. So I hope that you have learned something today. But let me um let me once again present to you the rules to remember that we had, or the rules that we discussed during this lesson. So the rules to remember are, in indirect questions, the subject always comes before the verb. So like what I said in the question patterns that we had, you can notice that the subject always comes before the verb. Okay? So the next one is indirect questions leave out the auxiliary verb do. Um, Actually, indirect questions have so many rules regarding the auxiliary verbs. But some of these rules that we can remember is indirect questions omit the auxiliary verb do. Or just like what I've said a while ago, sometimes indirect questions omit question words. Okay? It depends upon the direct question that we will convert into indirect question. So next is indirect questions always start with an opening phrase. Of course, indirect questions are not indirect questions without an opening phrase. Okay? So for it to be used in formal spoken English, for it to be formal and polite, it should start with an opening phrase. Okay? So uh let me let you refresh your minds about the patterns once again. So the patterns for indirect open question is opening phrase plus the question word plus the subject plus the verb. Okay? So please remember that. And then in indirect close questions, there's now the presence of the word if and whether. Okay? But still the pattern is the same. Okay, so let us start with opening phrase, if and whether, plus the subject, plus the verb, plus the rest of the sentence. Okay, so those are the um, patterns. And then for the phrases, okay, let me repeat. So we use could you tell me, do you know, I was wondering, do you have any idea, would it be possible, is there any chance, would you mind? So there are so many phrases, but Here are some. So here are some that you can use when you are gonna ask for indirect questions. So that's all. Thank you for joining today's class, and I hope you have learned something about our lesson for today. Even though maybe we find the lesson somehow hard, but we managed to finish this lesson, and I hope that you will learn something and you will gather something that you can use for future purposes. So thank you guys. Goodbye.
Thank you,
Bye,
ma'am.
ma'am. Thank
Thank
you.
you.